Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's segment of Accountable Leadership for an Affordable Government. My name is Glenn Albanesius, and I'm joined by my colleagues Ken Fracasso and Marcia Sterling. As we have in the past, lead off with some news that occurred during the week. And good news for everyone, we will be taking calls in the second half. So we just ask that you kindly identify yourself, keep your questions as short as possible, 1 to 2 minutes, and then allow as many people as possible to participate. Thank you for joining us. Both Ken and Marcia spent time this week with the Gilbert students in 2 classes, I think Wendy Salters and Mr. Getz, correct?
Yes.
And you've got some comments and actually had some good response when you went up there, so I'll allow you to share some of those thoughts with us.
We did, and before we get started, if I could intercede for just a moment, I would like to let everyone know that we are participating in a debate which will be held next Thursday at the Gilbert School, October 27th at 7:15 p.m. I spoke to Don Getz, and he was kind enough to push it back 15 minutes to allow us to do our live show here at the studio from 6 to 7. So we'll be scurrying out to Gilbert School immediately following our live presentation to take part in the debate at 7:15 next Thursday night, the 27th at the Gilbert School.
So the accusations that we were avoiding that debate were somewhat premature.
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a tremendous opportunity, and I give Wendy Salter and Don Getz a lot of credit for, teaching what I think of as really relevant political science classes in terms of bringing the kids in to focus on what's going on in their town, and bringing them to Board of Selectmen meetings, having them read the charter, and using it as a hands-on approach. I think as they both explained, they start local, they do state, and then they'll end up with the federal elections, at the end of the year as that proceeds. So, from that perspective, I think it's great that they use the fact that there's stuff going on here in town and gives them a chance to interact hands-on. I think we got a lot of really interesting and good feedback. I mean, not related to the election. We did hear from them that they're very happy about the 7th and 8th grade move.
Very happy.
They're mentoring, these were seniors, 17 and 18-year-old students. They're mentoring, the younger kids. And so while it's largely a separate experience during the day, they're very aware of the fact that the school now is, sort of fully occupied, and everybody's got a nice, energy and vibe about that. And I guess then what was interesting as a lead-off point when we were talking about what's going on in town in politics, they don't understand kind of, because they are kids and they look at everybody in the school as their friend. They didn't understand, I think, some of the divisions that are happening among the adults, and in particular, and they are teenagers, so they take things to heart. They don't understand why the mayor and Mr. Dutton aren't supporting, that combination, and are still starting to question the Gilbert School, because, I mean, it's, this from high school, it's your school, it's sort of your whole life,
right,
and it embodies who they are. So they were really very enthusiastic about 7th and 8th grade. Some of them even, I think, said they wished it had happened sooner so that they could have been part of it. But they're thrilled to have them, and I think that's great. And again, I think it's great that they're focused on politics, and they understand that that's a division, I think, between you guys and the mayor, because you both supported the move.
Correct.
You both were vocal about it, and not without some understanding of what it means to send your younger kids, up to a building like that and make sure it's all done well. But I think again, we heard that the faculty and the students are doing a great job in terms of executing that plan.
Well, it certainly was an opportunity not only for the kids to benefit, but Gilbert, I think, as they have done over many years, rose to the task. They put it together in a short period of time. I didn't hear a whole lot of complaining. I think they did what they had to do, and I think that's part of what the community of Winchester really is all about, aside from all the bickering and infighting. I think we can accomplish things, and I think that was a classic example of how we get stuff done.
Yeah. And exactly. I mean, they when they were given a task, they performed what I thought extremely admirable, and they did what they needed to do, and it is working well, and it is successful.
Right.
And in the short time that they've been there, it is a very much a success.
Well, and the other thing I think that's interesting is these kids really got it in terms of, well, it's been good for the 7th and 8th grade, and it's great to have the school have be in full use for the community, but they understand that financially it was important to happen. I mean, they said, look, I think one of the kids said, I understand the main issue is the Board of Ed budget, and they jokingly said from the back of the room, show us the money,
Right.
What's going on with the money. And I think they don't understand because they have heard that the Gilbert adults, or Gilbert team accounts, down to the pencil where the money's going. So, they also thought it was interesting to hear that there's literally millions of dollars that's unspoken for at this point, because I think they're learning in that government class that the most important role you play as an elected official is how you spend that money.
Sure. Well, I think I asked both of you whether or not you thought the kids that may not be of voting age would go home and talk to their parents about the conversations that you had, and I think you both said that probably they would.
I definitely do. I think they would. I think it was something different for them, and I think they would share that with their parents as well as their peers.
Right.
And I think that hopefully they'll get a good turnout tonight as the Board of Education's debate, and they asked us literally, because we asked them what their questions would be, and one of the students says, well, first he said, I want to know where's the money, and then another student turned it right around to us and asked us, if we were students, what would we ask? So it's like we aren't going to do your homework.
Because I'm for you. Yeah,
right.
But
there was a sense that was their homework.
It was a good give and take. And,
well, I was going to say,
they were very attentive.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and they were very current. I mean, I think the teachers had done a good job. In the paper that morning was the story about the fact that the Board of Ed wants to give pay raises to the administrators, to the superintendent and the other senior administrators, and they were sitting there saying, well, wait a minute. They're running empty buildings. I mean, those kids went to school in those buildings. They know they're half to 2/3 empty. They're running empty buildings. They're talking about firing teachers, and they're talking about giving the administrators pay raises, and that made no sense to them. And I mean, Gilbert in negotiating that contract skinnied back on some things. And those kids commented that they noticed that while they're happy with the program, there are some of the extras that got taken off the table this year. Because Gilbert was trying to toe the line and work with everybody in terms of the budget, work with the town. And so they were scratching their heads and saying, I don't understand if the Board of Ed is a group of adults. I mean, I think one student literally said, I know I can't go home and tell my mother, I want to go buy a new dress today. If she doesn't have the money, I can't have the dress. I can't just say I want to go buy a new dress.
Right. Well, I think that as kids get older, the reality of, finances come into play. I mean, when you get an allowance or you have to work or whatever, you watch that money pretty carefully. And I think that, as these students get more and more up to speed with some of the things that are going on in town, I think, they're going to start to see the same set of facts that we do. And, I encourage the spontaneity of the conversation that they had with you guys, and I think that, again, that's where we start to make progress. They need to know what's going on.
Well, and they asked, why aren't a lot of them drive, so they said, why are the roads in such bad shape? And I think Ken talked at length about how we have to redevelop downtown to create a bigger tax base to pay for that, because otherwise we're just going to be asking your parents for more money, and they all were, well, I don't have any more money.
Right, I mean, it is. I mean, we've talked about this on previous shows, and there's only one source of revenue, and that's property taxes. So unless we build a tax base and have more players donating more to keep it low where it is or lower, the only option we do have, if we're going to do any work in this town, is to raise taxes.
Right.
All of us are absolutely against that policy.
We are, and I think, especially in today's economy, that's the right position. And yet, I read from time to time on the blog that there are people that absolutely feel that people should be paying more money.
Right.
And whether or not they're in a position to do so, and it doesn't really enter into the conversation, is the fact that the Board of Ed needs more money. And right now, the only way to do that is raise taxes. And we act, as our group, Ken, you, me, and Karen, and Lisa, we drew the line last year, and I think that was the absolute right approach for the people that have to pay the money.
We have to. I mean, and I don't want to get carried away on something here, but on a national level, it's what's got us in the situation that we're in. Union contracts, during negotiations, like, well, let's just give it to them, and we'll worry about how we're going to pay for it tomorrow. I mean, this has come back to haunt us. And the same thing with the housing market. Some people had the idea that everyone should own their own home. Well, there could be nothing further from the truth. I mean, some people just aren't meant to be homeowners, because they don't have the money, first of all, to start out with a proposition like that, and they can't maintain them. Right. So we gave everybody a mortgage that we knew was going to fail, and we're paying for it now. And I mean, it trickles right down to the locals. We need to have a plan going forward to pay for the improvements we need to do. And that is not going to happen by raising the property taxes. It can't happen.
We need to invest in our community, but we need to get more people here to invest properly.
Sure.
We can't, it's going to be scraping the barrel if we try to keep doing it with the people that are here. That led, though, to a very interesting discussion in terms of, well, do you guys want to invest in education? And we said, well, of course we do. But, the starting point is that you've got to know how much money you have and where it's going. Mm-hmm. And they completely got that there is no, that we're still struggling with that in terms of how much money we have and where it's gone. But we went from that discussion to one of, I think we both asked him, what would you like to see in the future? What would you see? And we talked about technology. And it brought up an interesting conversation of the idea of, wouldn't it be great? One of the kids said, we'd love to have more current information, more current textbooks was the word that he used. But I raised, wouldn't it be great if you could all get an Amazon Fire, mm-hmm. The new iPad competitor, if you will. Mm-hmm. And Amazon's still rolling this out, it's very new. But they're $50 to $75 a piece. And then for, say, $100 to $200, every kid can get one of those. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, just for that school, that would be about $120,000 because it's about 600 kids, $200 a piece, round numbers. But that wouldn't just be the equipment, that would be all current textbooks. And then for a small fee, they'd get updated every year. And then those kids would be current, and they'd have something, and they all, the other interesting thing is we said, would you take care of it? No, I'd take care of it. I wouldn't break it. I'd be really careful. I mean, there'd have to be all kinds of other sort of safeguards in terms of making sure that they were, maintained properly and cared for. But those kids want to do new things. They want technology to be embraced. Right. And they want the town to find a way to work with them on it, but they understand that there's got to be a balance. The other thing that was really interesting, given that we are the Republican team that was there, one class in particular said, well, how do you guys feel about the Register Citizen website? Because we view that as cyberbullying. The idea that you can go online anonymously mm-hmm. and make negative comments about people with no ramification. Mm-hmm. And it led to a broader discussion in terms of behavior in school, right. which I think is a very hot topic among teenagers and parents.
I got to tell you, I was very, very impressed. It was a young lady, and I did not catch her name. I mean, we talked right up until the bell rang. Yeah. So, we didn't have a chance to... I recognized a few faces, mm-hmm. but, I mean, there was this young woman in particular that said that she couldn't understand why the paper would print something that people weren't able to put their name to. Right. And and I applauded her for that. And she feels exactly the same way that I do. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was raised that if you don't want to take credit for something that you wrote, don't say it, and don't write it.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good policy. Mm-hmm. And it's I explained to her that I think that it's just the paper's way of
selling
making money,
yeah.
and it's a sad thing that it's come to that. But there's been lots of comments in the paper that people don't sign their name to. I mean, I think it's gotten a little bit better, but it's still. I don't think there's any place.
I think it's very interesting that they immediately linked it. That they knew that there's been inappropriate comments, mm-hmm. over the top comments, and they thought about it. And they said, aren't you your team in particular seems to get more of these comments. And we told them, look, you've got to be able to be strong enough in yourself to realize that those things are just wrong. Right. And that reflects poorly on the person that wrote it, even if you don't know who it is. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't reflect on the person that it's spoken about. I mean, it's kind of a parenting almost sounds like 101. But again, these kids take things really to heart. And her voice was quavering as she was saying these things. She said, Mr. Fracasso, I've seen some really awful things, and I just don't understand. So, I mean, I give the teachers a lot of credit because the kids obviously are looking at all the really hard things, and they're forming opinions.
Right. I just want to jump back quickly, Marsh, to a point you made is that, we've kind of been painted into the corner by our position about the finances and trying to get that in order, that we're anti-education. I think that's the knee-jerk reaction by a lot of people, is that we hate kids. I hear that time and time again. I know I've commented on this show repeatedly, and that bothers me. It really does, because I don't think that nothing could be further from the truth. It really is not the case at all. But I keep wrestling with the fact that what we've asked for from the Board of Ed it hasn't been unreasonable. And if they had met us at least part way on some of these things. We could have started towards the path of, you know, down the path of getting things straightened out. And, you know, that's where you start to make some progress. You know, maybe not everything that we want, you know, is going to happen, but geez, meet us halfway on something, just to show some good faith. Because I think ultimately, like I said, we've got to work together ultimately, and that's the part that really eats at me week after week when we come here and talk about it, is that, and I'll go back to the fact that the town voted overwhelmingly. Again, we've said it time and time again, but Henry and the finance department here in town should have been involved, not to, you know, tell them how to spend their money, but just keep the books in order.
Correct.
And that's all we ever wanted. And the town realized that. They voted, you know, I have the numbers, overwhelmingly to make that happen. And that first meeting that we had with the Board of Ed, their hand couldn't have gone up fast enough to say, forget it.
Right.
And it was the last discussion we ever had. And, you know, we've been, you know, chastised for flouting the town's will on a number of issues, and I just think that was something so basic that the town wanted to have happen, and the Board of Ed resisted it, you know, right from minute one. And really no subsequent discussions about it.
Well, and it's interesting, the kids get that too, because they talked about the divisions in town, and we talked about the fact that the Board of Education and some members of the Board of Selectmen have basically broken the trust with the people in town. Because to say you're going to close a school, to know that there's, you know, almost $1 million in savings in that combination, and then just tell the town, tough, I don't care, I'm going to use the loophole in the law, I'm not going to close a building, I'm going to waste money, and that you're breaking the public trust, and that makes it impossible for the town to function properly.
Right. Well, I think the reality of, and I could be wrong, but I'll go out on a limb and say that, I mean, if the student count continues to decline, they're going to end up having to do it anyway.
Right.
I mean, it's going to get to be, get to a point where it just can't continue, and you know, I think we avoid that by consolidating and redirecting funds to new programs and new equipment, and that's what we've always said.
Right.
But if think about it, if the Board of Ed had come forward and said, okay, you're right, consolidating this is worth $700,000 to $1 million. The closing a building is worth $500,000 to $750,000. But give us $200,000 to buy all of these kids new iPads, or we're going to buy, you know, new textbooks, or we're going to invest it in this new, you know, sports equipment, or, you know, we're going to use it for, you know, these programs. That would have been a completely different discussion than just, we're going to take the money, we're not going to close the building, we're going to waste all this other money for the sake of having the other money to spend. We're going to waste $500,000 so we can spend $700,000, and you just suck it up, or you just deal with it. And again, the kids got that. They understood that there's a break in the bond of trust, and they understand. And what they don't understand, though, is I thought adults were supposed to do this better. I think came out of one of the kids' mouths, which got a big laugh out of the class.
Well,
the other thing too, that just, we're still on the subject, is everyone in town needs to realize that there's not going to be a dime more that's going to go into the Board of Education until we get the audit that we're due. You know, that is critical, and you know, we're not making. I still don't think we're making any progress on that. I mean, there was some a little bit of back and forth on Monday night. A taxpayer got up during public comment in the beginning of the meeting, excuse me, and said that he noticed that there wasn't anything on the agenda, and he was wondering what the status of the audit was. And the mayor replied that, you know, the information was all submitted, and that they were working diligently on it. And probably 30 seconds later, I think Dale Martin, town manager, read an email that he had received from Vanessa Rosati from Bloom Shapiro, a senior partner, stating that when she was here Friday, the preceding Friday, the 14th, that while she was here, she still doesn't have information that she needs. So, you know, we aren't moving forward on this whatsoever. We're still stuck in the same place that we were 8 months ago, 10 months ago. We still don't have an audit. So, and that's a huge problem for us.
And it needs to get resolved. But I will say one thing, and I want to thank everybody out there that commented on this and made this happen, but you may have seen in the paper, the paving of the parking lot at Walker Field, the using of the steep money to do that, appears to be getting back in process and back online. I think we talked about it on our show a couple of times. There was an article or two in the newspaper. A number of people commented to planning and zoning members to Joe Rotundo, who was an advocate for this from day one. Inland Wetlands had already approved it at the time he presented it about a month ago. But the bottom line is it appears to be back on track. It appears to be moving forward. They came to some resolution. I wasn't able to get sort of the details, but it appears that they're moving back to being in a position to get the whole thing laid out properly this fall, let it settle, and be able to pave in the spring, but most importantly, be able to actually get something done. So I want to thank everybody that made phone calls and P&Z members that saw the light and worked to put this together, because it's important for us to get stuff done as a town.
Absolutely, and that was a small project that's been hanging out there for a long time. I know it's been a frustrating thing for a few of us that wish it had happened sooner, but again, kudos to everybody involved that made it happen.
I think then now that's the Gilbert School stuff was Monday, and it was a good Monday morning. But the other thing to talk about is door to door, because we continue to do that. Right. We all went out together this weekend, and again, appreciate all those of you who are out working in your yard or come to the door to talk to us, because it is the best mechanism for us to hear what people are thinking. And a couple of questions came up. That I think it's worth talking about. I think the one that probably you guys can comment on the best was the whole bus parking deal. What that was and what it wasn't, because it came up so fast and there was such little information about it. I think people are still trying to figure out what was asked and what was offered.
Well, a few people wanted to know why we would turn down, I forget the number they threw out, over $100,000, and I think the reasons that we have were sound, and I'm not sure how many people actually knew the details, but again, it wasn't just a snap decision, no vendetta, it just didn't make sense. Right. And it came at us last minute.
Right, and I think that's the biggest problem. I mean, it came to us literally at the 11th hour, and the bus owner, the company, was going to do any of the work down there, and he said he had a bulldozer and he was going to regrade and excuse me, and gravel the parking lot. They were going to need to cut the fence and make another entrance. I don't know how familiar people are with the layout down there, but the one entrance that we do have, it's close to the corner. There's been some accidents there before, and they wanted to cut the fence and put another driveway in close to where the diesel tank was. I mean, there wasn't anything that I thought that made it sound like it was a good plan. Being that we're building on top of a landfill, there's going to be young children there, because a lot of the bus drivers do bring their children when they deliver the children to school. There was a parking issue down there where the cars were going to park when they took the buses out. There was a question about refueling. I mean, there was way too many questions and way too short a time to do it. They wanted to put more lighting in there. They wanted to put a room, excuse me, that they could have for their drivers, and all this was going to cost money. I mean, we weren't going to reap any benefits from this. Whatever improvements they did, it was still going to be part of the entire picture.
Yeah, they were going to have to improve.
I mean, it wasn't like we were going to get handed a check for $25,000 or $50,000
or $125,000.
I mean, it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So I think that.
Well, the septic had to be improved. That was going to be $40,000. You had to regrade. As you said, it's a contaminated space. You don't know what you're going to find. You have to put in a new entrance. I mean, it could easily be more than $100,000 to upgrade the facility, and so then the town's actually paying for something that benefits a third party.
Right. And his take on it was that well, you're going to have all these improvements, when we leave. Well, we don't need another. We
don't need a bus parking lot.
Fence line. We don't need a bus parking lot, right? And I don't think that we need another rest area or break room for the public works employees. They already have one, so I think they're set as far as that goes.
They're supposed to be out working, not in the.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much either that we were, critical of the fact they had an idea. It just wasn't well founded, well structured.
It wasn't well thought out.
I think that's a distinction that people have to make. Is, we seem to shoot everything down, and it's a vendetta against someone.
Well, that's not our fault. No. That's the way some people on the other side see it. So whenever they have a difference of opinion, they always got to throw some stones. But we're used to being stoned pretty hard.
Well, and there really wasn't even enough time to consider. There was a lot of hair on it, a lot of questions, a lot of issues, and then there wasn't enough time to consider it. I mean, I talked to Dale Martin about this, the town manager, and he said, "Well, I just expected them to give us a provisional approval," and I said, "You have to go through a whole process with town property. It takes months." The Board of Selectmen isn't in a position to say, let's go ahead and let's spend all this money, make all these improvements, and let's hope the town approves of it. That it was just too much. It was an idea. It just didn't happen to be a particularly good idea.
Right.
And the other thing, and I spoke to Jim Rotundo after the fact, and he told
he
me
wasn't
that
a huge
he
fan
wasn't
of it.
he wasn't in favor of it at all. He said to me he was glad that it got shot down for a number of reasons. And not one of them being the fact that in the wintertime, excuse me, his guys would be responsible for clearing even more snow than they have to take care of already. So, and there was safety issues. And there was a lot of issues. So, I mean, he was glad that it didn't end up down there too.
Right. But again, walking around door to door to people that, either didn't attend the meeting, don't have the details, all they hear is...
They get bits and pieces, just like everything else. They hear a little here and a little there, and they have to piece together what's fact and what's
Well,
fiction.
or they only hear, how could you turn down $125,000?
Right.
It's like,
Right.
well, because if, and I said this to one person, I said, well, how about I'm gonna offer you $50,000, but you first have to repave your driveway, redo your lawn, paint the whole inside of your house, and put a new roof on it. And he was like, well, that's a lot more than $50,000. I said, exactly. It was like, and you have to. People are busy. They elect, and this is another thing I think that I heard from some folks. A lot of people actually said thank you. Well, after you explain the issues to them, they said thank you for turning that down. I don't have time to go to every Board of Selectmen meeting and hear what's going on, or even read the paper every day.
Right.
And I will vote for you because you explained this well. I understand what you said, and I trust you to make a good decision based on being forthcoming with me and telling me, the information that you have here. And that's the judgment people are making in an election.
Sure. Well, we live in a soundbite society, and that's the reality of it. And when we take the pledge and sit on the board, I mean, there's a lot of work involved in making an educated decision. It's not just something you sit up there once a week or once every 2 weeks and say, okay, I'm going to vote this way. I mean, our group specifically spends a lot of time, peeling back the onion.
There were a lot of people also that said, why aren't they parking the buses where they were in years past, over on the intersection of Route 8 and 20? And I said, well, that was something that, it's a different company, and I'm just going to assume now that, the new guy didn't want to pay rent where the other buses were, or maybe that owner of that property didn't want buses, maybe he was doing something different. But I mean, that was totally, that wasn't part of our deal. That was nothing that had anything to do with us. Right. That was something that was supposed to be taken care of between the bus owner and whatever citizen, whoever he could find a place to park them.
He must have had a backup plan because, as far as I know, the buses,
yeah, they're right next door.
Well, and I thought there were some issues with that too.
Yeah, well, they paved a little section, and after Irene, which was a big storm, we had another storm, I think Lee maybe.
Yeah, but it was flooded.
That area was flooded also, so I don't know. Maybe we'll have to put pontoons on them.
Well, and the other thing that comes up door to door, and we already touched upon this, but people ask about the audit mainly by saying, is it true by not having an audit that we can't fix a road? And the answer is absolutely yes. Because in order to be able to actually implement an action plan to even fix the most desperate of our roads, we're going to have to borrow some money. And we cannot do anything right now. We're frozen. Without a current audit, and quite frankly at this point, even if we had all the information, what that audit's going to say from a financial controls perspective for the Board of Ed is not going to be good. But without any of that information, you can't begin to sit down and talk to somebody about trying to come up with a plan and get something done. So, again, our message is that we want to grow the town to be able to repair, everything that we have to repair. But to even start with some of the most desperate repairs, we first have to get this financial audit done. I mean, quite frankly, I've mentioned this before, we're getting to a point now where we do have, a few $1 million of debt outstanding, and I don't know what Henry's telling those people, but at some point, if you're over a year late, we quite frankly look like Enron. Right. That we can't produce financial information, and we have a Board of Education that, I would say is based on the information that was in the newspaper, either completely disconnected from reality, or really don't feel like they're members of the community. I mean, the other thing this week that people talked about was the fact that the Winsted Journal is pursuing this Freedom of Information Act request, and some of the emails that were in the paper between the Board of Ed.
That was pretty disconcerting. I didn't see the paper, but I heard about some of the comments that were in there, and it's mind-boggling. I mean, the very people that we have in positions of leadership are saying that, you know, they want to do more stuff behind the scenes, so, you know, the public doesn't know what's going on. I mean, it's not right.
Or they don't want another board member to be picked unless it's someone that that's in their pocket.
Right, that they can manipulate.
That they can, and then I think, perhaps no surprise, the idea that the article opens with a large discussion about whether it's okay for the school district to hire a sitting board member's spouse.
Right.
And, you know, perhaps, and the superintendent at the time, Superintendent Salerno, saying, well, since there's no law against it, it must be okay. I mean, their concept of perception versus reality is just missing. And, you know, again, Kathy's not the chair anymore, but I give her a lot of credit for typing back, look, this is the wrong thing to do.
Right.
It is morally corrupt and we can't do it. Now, you know, given that we have a sitting selectman asking for special favors, I guess I'm not surprised that a sitting member of the Board of Ed might think it's okay for the same thing. But again, door to door, people said, look, I could say it's the same old Winsted to say that there's a group of people getting benefits and that's why they're running for office. But I hope if I vote for you, that will change. Because people don't want that to be the case anymore. They really want to have people that are, you know, making, as you said, decisions that are in the best interest of the community and not in the best interest of themselves.
And with the Board of Ed, I mean, the number of candidates and the number of open seats, I think it's pretty much everybody that's running is going to elect it, or is there one seat?
No, there'll be one seat. Kathy's seat, because of the timing of her resignation, there will be a musical chair since someone won't get a seat, and you know, and then it will remain to be seen, you know, what will happen with that open 2-year seat. But the other thing the FOI made clear is they don't want my husband James Roberts to become a board member, because
I think that was mentioned directly.
Yeah, no, they refer to him as Voldemort, you know, he who shall not be named, for anybody who's got children and familiar with the Harry Potter movies in the books. They quite frankly are afraid of anybody who's going to shine a light on what they're doing. Right. That in and of itself is an example of something that's got to change.
Right. And
well, to say that you want to meet behind the scenes, we'll have more meetings in private, so we don't have to, you know, put this information out. I mean, that in itself is, I got to think it's borderline criminal. I mean, you know, as far as, you know, freedom of information, and here they're trying to do stuff in the dark and you know, keep it all between themselves. I mean, it's not good government.
No.
Not at all. They're just making a bad situation much worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know that the, as you stated, the audit status, that's always a big question, and you know, that's without a doubt the single most critical piece of information that this town needs for everything. Right. For everything.
And if you elect us, we will stay focused and we will get it done.
Right.
That's the thing I would that people have said. Why isn't the mayor? Why doesn't she, when she comes door to door, talk about the fact that we have no audit? Why does she only talk about wanting to give the Board of Ed more money? Right. People don't understand that. They really don't. They don't understand the disconnect that happened, I think, a little over a year ago, where there used to be, you know, 7 and now there are 4. They really don't understand that. But I know that we're approaching the halfway point in the show, so we did say we'd open up the phone lines. So we will take calls. You know, if people want, you know, have questions for us, we'd welcome them. The number is 860-738-5091. So we will. We're live now, so we'll take phone calls when people call in.
The other question that came up a lot was, why haven't they closed the building?
Yeah.
And we've kind of been over and over that, you know, numerous times, and you know, it's unfortunately it's left up now to the Board of Education. They said they would, and now they're not going to because they wanted to control the money. So
we have a caller.
Oh, okay.
Again, we're going to ask people. Hello, may I ask who's calling?
Yes, this is Brian O'Haron calling.
Hello, Brian. How are you this evening?
I'm all right. I'm going to turn my TV down so you don't get the feedback. I don't call into these programs very often, but I do want to call in and say that a lot of people have been asking me over the last few weeks who I'm going to vote for. And I want to say very clearly up front that I'm going to be voting for all the fiscal conservatives that are running. And I'm going to vote for you. I know Karen's not there right now, but I'm going to vote for you I'm going to vote for Lisa Smith, who's a Democrat, and I'm going to vote for James Robert, who's also a Democrat, because I think they have the experience, and you have the experience, to run the town the way it has to be run. As you can remember, we had a lot of problems in the last couple of years. Moving 7th and 8th grade to Gilbert, everybody thought the world was going to come to an end, it wasn't going to work, and teachers didn't like it, the parents didn't like it, the kids wouldn't like it, but now it's happened, and everybody loves it. So you did a good job there, and I think the same thing's going to happen here. But I just want to ask you one question. First, I want to tell everybody I'm voting for all of you, and a lot of people are. They tell me every day. There was a letter in the paper the other day by Porter Griffin III, who's a long time Democrat in town, well respected, and he spoke highly of your team and Lisa, and he's voting for you, and he is not voting for some of the people that he grew up with in the Democratic Party. When we had the budget recently, I had Maya John Gauger on the program, another long-standing Democrat, past chairman of the Democratic Party, and selectman and head of the Taxpayer Association, and he was very much in favor of your approach to handling the finances in the Board of Education and the education. So I'm going to leave you with one question, because I get two big questions all the time. One is, why haven't we closed the school? When are we going to close the school? Why are you asking us for tax money when we have empty schools? And that comes up every day, everywhere, because everybody can understand that. And the second question I'll leave you with is, we've been talking mostly tonight about how you're going to manage the situation, but what most people are worried about right now is they don't want a supplementary tax increase. They don't want it, and if that does happen, and I don't think you want it either, but some people do, if it does happen, it'll hurt our small businesses in this town, because the money will be going to the education instead of people won't have it in their pocket to spend. So I'm going to leave you with that, and good luck in the election. I know you're going to get a lot of votes, and I'm hoping you win. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
I'd like to answer the second question first.
Yeah.
If you don't want a supplemental tax, then vote for the Republicans. Otherwise, if the Democrats get in, you will be paying a supplemental tax. It'll probably be the first thing they do after they get sworn in, is to initiate a supplemental tax. So I will leave the first question to one of you people.
Well, I just like with the Walker Field parking lot, I think the key to this is keeping the pressure on, quite frankly. The Board of Ed has to hear, why haven't you closed a building? Why haven't you closed a building? They need to hear it from everybody. I don't know if you agree. I think people need to tell them that that needs to happen.
Right. And again, as I said before, I think circumstances ultimately are going to, position them where they're going to have to. They are obviously going to fight that as long as they can, but...
I think we have another call.
We have another call. Hello? Hello?
Hello,
Hello, may I ask who's calling?
Richard Pozo.
Hello, Mr.
Hello, Richard.
How are you this evening?
I've never had the opportunity to meet you, Marcia.
I'm sorry? I don't believe we've met, actually.
No, I'm getting a lot of feedback. I turned my TV off. I don't know what it is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe that's delayed. No, you and I have never had the opportunity to meet. But I love what you're saying. And Ken, you and I have talked in the past. Glenn, you and I have also spoken. I'm speaking as a personal individual at the moment and not a taxpayer or a member of the taxpayers group. However, we will be voting for your entire group. At least I will. I'm sure that my wife will. She has mentioned that to me. The one thing I wanted to mention, Ken, you go back far enough to remember that I offered the Board of Education to do a forensic audit.
Yes, I do.
The fact that you people have been having such difficulty with this board, I'm wondering, is there anything that you can do with the state board? Or have you already tried? I know that you've been in contact with them in the past, but you seem to be getting nowhere.
Well, that is something that I think that is going to become a reality sooner rather than later. There have been some recent developments, as recent as late last night and early this morning, that has led us to believe that the only way that we're going to dig ourselves out of this mess is to have a forensic audit. The audit has been stonewalled once again. Vanessa was out here on Friday. There's a lack of information. It's just the same thing over and over again. OPM has been notified, and I don't know if it'll happen before the election. I wish it would, quite frankly. But the way that government moves, I'm afraid that it won't be happening until after the election.
Well, they certainly have a way of stonewalling all the time. I know that I offered to do the forensic audit for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it wouldn't have cost a penny.
Right.
You go outside now and have someone do a forensic audit, it's going to cost mucho dollars.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
But
I've done forensic audits in the past.
But Mr.
And I said it to you once before, I'll say it publicly again, I would have discovered embezzlement. And it was right after that that, you know, we lost the financial guy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm hoping, I certainly love everything that Marcia has been talking about, and I know where at least 2 votes are going to be coming from at 133 Laurel Way.
All righty.
So good luck during the election.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I'll leave the phone open for someone else.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye. One other thing we should touch on in terms of the state is that there will be a hearing in December,
Correct.
most likely, and that is going to be an excellent opportunity, if one does not happen sooner, to walk through everything that's been going on.
It'll be the first time that we'll have a chance to
be
present,
heard.
you know, where we're coming from. I mean, we did go talk to the State Board of Ed,
The State Department of Ed.
State Department of Education, and you know, they time and time again they said that they want us to solve this locally, and we tried. I sat down with Dr. Dennehy, and it never went any farther than that conversation. You know, he was going to go back to his board. We were going to try to sit down and hash some of this stuff out, and if we had, we probably wouldn't be in the situation that we are right now. But the fact remains that the audit has not even started. They still don't have the information necessary to even begin this audit, when some people are saying that it's already been completed.
Yeah.
I think the light's blinking again.
Okay. Well. Good evening. May I ask who's calling?
Good evening, Marcia. David LaPointe.
Hi, Mr. LaPointe. How are you?
Good. I wanted to call in to let your viewers know that the Winsted Independents are supporting the entire Republican slate, along with David Capabianca for town clerk and Lisa Smith as a petitioning candidate, along with James Nicholas Roberts. And we're doing that for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that we think that the Democrats have a lot of ethical problems with their candidates being public employees of the schools, and they are now trying to, run the finances of the town of Winchester on the Board of Selectmen. And we believe that while being paid by the taxes and spending, they are, voting on the Board of Selectmen. We think this is wrong, but the Democrats think it's okay. Democrats like Marianne Welcome, who's a teacher, she's paid with taxpayers' money, making over $75,000 a year salary and benefits, and getting raises almost every year for the past 7 years, along with Candy, Althea Perez, who's a school principal, who is paid with taxpayers' money, making over $129,000 a year. And every year, they've gotten pay raises. And every year, both of them, along with James DeVita, who served on the Board of Education, who was also a public employee, have voted for higher and higher taxes. When the good people who are running in the Republican Party, as well as Lisa Smith, a Democrat, have stopped the higher taxes from being a reality. We're already getting overtaxed, the highest tax increase ever by the Democrats up in Hartford and the governor. So we thank you, people, and we hope people vote for you.
Thank you.
Well, we thank you for your support.
Okay.
Well, it is a key point that I think, again, walking door to door, there are a lot of people who want to take the spare money they have and invest it in their homes. They want to be able to put on a new roof or paint the outside, or they had a tough winter too. They'd like to redo their driveway. I mean, they can't afford they literally can't afford to spend 1.3 million more on the schools this year. I mean, that budget passed by a margin for a reason. I mean, they get it. They know that the Board of Ed should be operating with less money. They understand that the state law that passed in July said that they should be operating with less money. And, you know, they get it that when you talk to them about the fact that a school building's not closing gives them the loophole to say we can sue you for more money. They get it that that's just wrong. I mean, these people aren't afraid to, they're not saying I don't want to pay taxes, but at some point they're saying I want to be able to maintain my own home as well.
Right, and they want to know where the money's going, as do we.
Sure.
And that's a right that they should have. You know, we need to know where this is going.
Right, and in this last budget process we've spoken here before, we were able to reallocate funds to, build up the fund balance. Again, some people have been critical of that, but
Right.
When it does come time to borrow, we've said it repeatedly, that is a factor.
Yeah, you've got to have I mean, everybody knows this. When you go to buy a house, you have to put down a down payment, and you still have to have a savings account.
Right.
You can't be, well, for a while there, you could be completely out of money, but you can't anymore.
Sure.
So we're not going to be able to borrow any money if we have no savings account.
So I think that was, a shrewd move, and certainly the town benefited from that. And, things are going to happen, so that you are going to need the money there at one point or another. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important while we have a few minutes to recap last week, because I think that really sent a message or laid out a game plan for people that we want people to understand, and we, as we continue to go door to door, we want people's comments on it, and that is we plan to get going in the first 90 days. Right. We're going to have the town manager do a peer group study, and the purpose of that isn't just to figure out who the 6 or 8 towns are that look like us, but it's to say we're going to right-size government. We're going to figure out, exactly, how many police, how many fire, how many public works, what's done well other places, what are we doing well. Maybe we'll find out that we do some things well. I wouldn't be surprised. I would hope that we would, but I know that there are things that we can learn from other people.
Right.
But the most important thing is we have to be as efficient as possible. And going back to your point a few minutes ago, Glenn, I think one of the first things that the Board of Ed has to, come to understand is that we've got to have one finance department. We've got to have one maintenance department. We can't have 18 janitors working for the Board of Ed and then 4 more janitors over here. We should have one group with one boss. I mean, a lot of other towns do that already, and we need to do that because it's only through those kinds of economies of scale, at least in the current environment for the next year or so, are we going to have any money to invest in anything.
Right. I think the other thing that we want to do is to task the land use boards with getting some regulations written and updated. But the main focus needs to be in the downtown corridor.
Right.
I mean, Route 44. That's where we need to get some improvements going, as soon as possible.
Well, and we've got to have plans. They've got to put in place, just like with the parking lot, you got to put in place regulations that you can make work. We can't tell, when we find, I'm going to use the word when, not if, when we find another Lexington Partners to redo that big mill, our first response to them can't be, well, you have to build a big parking lot on your own, or you have to give up half your development to parking lot, or else we're not going to approve your... That can't be our answer. We can't send somebody away that quickly. And, similarly, I think you got to get everybody working on the same page. EDC, I think, has been out there, sort of beavering away, but they have to be brought in and be working hand in glove on this stuff. They have to say, here's our idea of the businesses that we ought to have on 44. Here's the 5 businesses that are in each of these areas, and here's how we're going to go meet each of them and figure out who can be our partner.
Right. Because by doing that is the only way that we're going to get some feet on the street, and that's what we need. We need to get people, going to the businesses that we currently have, and taking care of those that might come in, new businesses.
Correct. And I think we've said it repeatedly here. We're supporting EDC. I mean, it's a group that we.
Another phone call.
Another phone call.
Blinking.
Good evening. May I ask who's calling?
It's Bob Rosali from New Hartford.
Hi. How are you?
Good.
Do you have a comment or a question for us this evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, and I just wanted to, I'll listen to your answer. But I think, my question, Gilbert is a good school. I take umbrage to the administration.
So I think if you remove the quasi from quasi-public and made it one school system, one school budget, you'd have fiscal responsibility and accountability. Now I'll hang up and listen to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Great show.
Thank you. I agree it's important that we get it running as one integrated program. And for starters, and you were part of this process, I think it would have been nice if they could have agreed on one superintendent. And it might have been nice to have Mr. Hatch be the superintendent for some transition period, and then they agree to hire another person to be the whole thing. But we definitely need to have it operate as one system. But the other thing I will say, I mentioned this earlier, and the Gilbert, and I'm not in any way saying that the Gilbert team is perfect. I do think there's some things that probably need to change there. But I do know from going to many budget hearings, they account down to the pencil where the money goes.
Right. And they have a track record of doing things right. I mean, you can't argue with that.
Right.
And I know that there's, certainly feelings that, more money has gone that direction than for the younger grades. That may or may not be true.
It's not true this
It's
year.
not true now.
It's not true now.
Yeah, I think that the call had a point. I mean, we've probably said amongst ourselves that, maybe Gilbert should run the whole show.
Right.
But to his point, I think, again, to be fair to, because there are a lot of people in the community that have spent a long time trying to understand what's, there are some questions that I think are fair with respect to Gilbert, and I think while we're putting a real spotlight on the Winsted Board of Ed, because they really are not being forthcoming, and it's not only completely unacceptable, we can't function as a town anymore with them doing this. But similarly, I have heard people comment on the Gilbert Trust and the way it's operated and how does it contribute, and it would be in their interest, I think, for them to proactively, and I'm not saying they answer this question tomorrow, but then proactively think about, how do I put a better foot forward? How do I explain better what we are and aren't doing at the school? How do I explain the partnership and create a real partnership with the community? Right. Right now the community is paying for the teachers and the programs that are there. We don't pay rent for that building. If we rented that building from somebody, it would cost an awful lot of money. We don't. They really do maintain that building well, but again, they explain what they're doing. They say, we're going to resurface the gym floor, and we have 3 bids, and the low one is this, and that's why we're doing it, and this is what it's going to be. They are that clear about stuff. But I think it's fair to say that we need to have them join as real partners in the process. Again, I think they made a step in the right direction. They agreed to put money back on the table when it became clear what the town was going to pass for a budget. And so I think we've got to keep an open hand to them, but I agree with the caller. I should appreciate what the caller's saying. I think it's in Gilbert's interest, the trust's interest, to be more forthcoming. But make no mistake, the operation day-to-day of that school is superior to the pre-K through 6.
Far superior. Far superior.
And again, they account, from what I've seen, they account to the pencil for what they spend money on, and they spend the money on the kids. I mean, I'll go back to, it's a pretty basic thing, but in the planning for the 7th and 8th grade program that they put in, when that vote passed in November, the Gilbert team turned around and said, how do we make this work as well as we possibly can? Right. They get it. This has to work for them to get a longer contract renewal for them to continue to be viable. Right. They get it. Our Board of Ed then should have started talking about what building we're going to close. And they should have had a discussion with the community and said, and agreed, by the way, and acknowledged, Bachelor does have asbestos issues. Hinsdale has these issues. Pearson we cannot close. It's our biggest building. We've already put $500,000 into it in the last 2 years. It's all up to date for ADA purposes. Yeah, would it be great to have a new parking lot? Should we redo the ball fields? Should we, the school board, if we're going to keep maintenance in our budget, should we actually spend that money to maintain the fence, maintain the fields, maintain the building? Yeah. I mean, that's all stuff that has to happen. And we'd be in a very different place if they'd agreed to have that conversation.
And that makes, for all those reasons and even some more, it's the biggest land area. If the day ever came when we wanted to expand to bring, another curriculum into the school system, we needed more room, we have the ability to do it there. Right. Bachelor, we don't. It's just all uphill. Hinsdale, there is some room there. But that's
it's a pretty built-around footprint.
Right. It would be too spread out. But the logical choice is Pearson School. You know, that would be a school that we should hang on to forever.
Well, and going back to the idea of that meeting with the Board of Ed, I think it was in the spring where you guys got the smoke signal of, you know, give us 21 million, we'll close Pearson. Give us
The Blackwell deal.
Give us 21 million, we'll close Bachelor. Give us 20 million, we'll close Pearson. Give us anything less, we won't give you anything. And you know, and essentially they kept their word there.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
I mean, they kept their word there. But, you know, again, going back to the positive things, I mean, we've touched on this a couple times. You're still on the building committee, right, for the American Mural Project?
Yes, I am.
So, I mean, I think that's somebody else that we have to sit down with, you know, pretty quickly, just to get a sense for where she is. I know she's been out traveling the country, working on the mural itself. You know, she's been doing some fundraising. I'm guessing it's a money issue mainly and a timing issue, but that's a wonderful thing for the town. We should be embracing that. We should be working on that. We should be doing everything we can to help her get that in place.
Right. And I think, you know, and I liked your point of when we find the next Lexington partner. You know, those are the kind of things that they're going to look at. That there's opportunities above and beyond, you know, maybe putting housing or some retail in, but arts
What
are
else is the
key
community?
to, you know, the development of a community. And I think the fact that we have, you know, we've said it over and over again, you know, we do have opportunities here in town. We're not, you know, void of things that could happen. And I agree. I think that if someone comes in and they look at something like that, that's all the more reason for them to, you know, invest here in town.
Right.
And come back. Yeah, and again, I think our another first step in that process is the median extension that's going to happen this summer in Carriage Maker Place, who's hopefully going to break ground this summer. We need to make the most of those opportunities. We need to capitalize on the people that are going to be here working here and the people that are going to be slowing down traffic-wise. I mean, we need to make the most of that. And probably the first thing we need to do once the snow clears is make sure that Main Street looks good.
Right.
And I will say this, I love the logo on the new bowling alley, I think, or the reopened.
It looks good, doesn't it?
It looks really nice.
It does. The white paint and the blue lettering, they did a very nice job on it.
I mean, that's again, we have the Gilson, we have the bowling alley, we have, you know, the American Mural Project, we have Whiting Mills. I mean, we have the college. I mean, we have a lot of really nice features, and that's not even touching on our green surroundings and our lakes.
Right.
So we really do need to continue to.
Yeah, and I think
bring all
our
that
group
into
is
focus.
focused on the right thing, and as we sit here and make distinctions between, you know, in the coming weeks, you know, when you vote for us, this is what you're going to get. I mean, we've been very clear about that. And the opposition, you're going to get a different picture. Yeah,
I mean, if you're happy the way things are right now and you want them to stay the same, then I guess your vote would be for row A. But you can rest assured that you'll end up with a supplemental tax right off the get-go. I'm sure that Mike Ronzullo will adhere to his word and say that he'll bring this capital projects project back to the light in November after his fellow Democrats are reelected. So the taxpayers will be footing an $85,000
hole
tax
in the
break
fund balance
for him. We'll have more insider deals. Jim DeVito will bring his financial skills from the Board of Education over to the Board of Selectmen. And I can foresee Marianne Welcome fighting with Candy Perez over whether they're going to spend $30 million rehabbing the 3 school buildings we have right now, or if Candy will get her way and we'll spend $60+ million on a brand new school. But you know, God only knows where they're going to put it, because I certainly hope it's not on the property up at the lake. So we'll have to bus every single student that we have up on the hill. But or if not. If you want something different, you want to change, then you need to vote for row B.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to plan for the future, you need to vote for us. If you want the status quo, vote row A.
Thanks, and we'll be here next Thursday before we go up to the Gilbert School for the debate.
And we thank everybody who called in this week, and we look forward to seeing more of you as we go door to door and hearing more from you next week. The phones will be open again for the second half of the show. Thanks, and good night.
Thank you.